Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir. So we can hear you, sir.
Great, great.
Yeah. So we'll just wait for a minute or so for the other participants to join, and so we'll be shortly starting in a minute or so, sir.
Okay.
Yeah. I think we are. We have most of the participants who have joined us by phone now. So good evening, everyone. So I, on behalf of the Neurocomputing Lab, Department of Electrical Engineering, IIT-Delhi, would like to welcome you all to the second day of the seminar on Science, Technology, and Society, the Promise for the Next Generation, under the initiative of Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav. So this Mahotsav, as we know, has been inaugurated by respected Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi to commemorate and celebrate the 75 years of India's independence. So as we know that the theme of our seminar is science, technology and society. So the essence is how the science is contributing towards the generation of new knowledge and thereafter its utilization to boost up the prosperity of the human lives. So when we talk about the generation of new knowledge, so it would only be possible if we have the fundamental education relating to that field. So recently, I'm very happy to share this thing that the higher education regulator has initiated a series of radical reforms, such as allowing graduate students to pursue doctorate degrees, doing away with the mandatory PhD requirements to teach in central universities, and introducing a common entrance examination for the admission to undergrads courses in the central universities and permitting the autonomous colleges to offer the online degrees. So the University Grant Commission is becoming a catalyst for this change under the vision and the able guidance of Professor Jagadesh Kumar ji, who has recently been taken who has recently taken the charge of the chairman of the UGC. So we today have with us Professor Jagdish. So briefly, I'll introduce Professor Jagdish. Sir is presently the chairman UGC and the professor Department of Electrical Engineering IIT Delhi. Sir has also served as the Vice Chancellor of Jawaharlal Nehru University from January 2016 to February 2012 to 2022. Sir has also held the NXP Chair Professor established by IIT Delhi by the Philips Semiconductors. Sir has received his MS and PhD degrees from IIT Madras. Sir has done his postdoctoral research and computing engineering, University of Waterloo, Canada. Sir's areas of expertise are nanoelectron devices, nanoscale devices, modeling and simulation, innovative device design, and power semiconductor devices. Sir has extensively published in these areas with 3 books, 4 book chapters, and more than 250 publications in the referred journal and the conferences. Several patent applications has been filed by the Sir in his area of research. He is on the editorial board of several international journals like IEEE Journal of Electronic Device Society and the editor-in-chief of IT Technical Review. Sir has also been the editor of IEEE Transactions on Electronic Devices for the 9 years. Sir is the fellow of Indian National Academy of Engineering, the National Academy of Sciences, and the Institute of Electronics and Telecommunication Engineering India. Sir has been awarded the 29th IIT Ramlal Wadhwa Gold Medal for distinguished contribution in the field of semiconductor device design and modeling. Sir has also received the first ever ISA VSI Techno Mentor Award given by the India Electronic and Semiconductor Association to recognize a distinguished Indian academician and researcher for playing a significant role as a researcher in the above field. is also a recipient of IBM Faculty Award for extraordinary recognition in the professional achievements. So Sir has always been a key role model for his students and colleagues. Sir's vision to work for the society has been clearly reflected in one of his light saying, which says that you too can positively impact our world. Be assured it won't be easy and the fame may never come your way. But the satisfaction gained from the life of a creative work will be immense. With these words, I would request Professor Jagadesh to please share his experience with our participants who have hailed from the different parts of the country. Over to you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We know that the participants are from different parts of the country, and there are also students from IIT-Delhi. And at IIT-Delhi, and also in many other institutes, we are reaching the end of the semester. Students are busy with preparation for the exams. But in spite of the fact that all of you are busy, I'm so glad to see that you have joined in such a serious discussion about education on sustainable development. I'm so glad to be back in a lecture at IIT-Delhi this afternoon because I finished my lecture in the morning from 8 to 8:50 for my course ELL 730 Integrated Circuit Technology. So today, what am I going to do? You know, during last several decades, and more so during last few years, there have been a lot of discussions and a lot of research done and policies developed on sustainable development. This has led to increased understanding and a better awareness about the need for sustainable development. So what I am going to do is to provide a gist of some of these ideas that have developed. And I would like to, acknowledge the original thinkers who are behind these ideas, although I will not be naming each one of them. So, recently I was reading an article in Science News written by a science author. The title of the article is very interesting. It says, "The materials of the last century shaped our modern life, but at a price." So let me elaborate the meaning of the title of this article. Apparently, in early 1950s, there was a newspaper headline, and this headline said, "Ice cream from crude oil." It's unimaginable. How can you make ice cream from crude oil? But the idea behind this title was that nutritious edible oil, edible fats, similar to the animal and vegetable fats, can be made, that is what they thought, can be made by simply breaking and rearranging the atoms of mineral oil such as petrol. But unfortunately, the petroleum-based ice cream never became a reality. If it became a reality, perhaps the petrol prices would have gone even higher, because you would have needed petrol both for ice cream and also for running your car. But fortunately, that never happened. However, during the last 1 century, we mastered the ability to synthesize many new materials, both organic materials and also inorganic materials. And what we have done, by manipulating, by recombining, by reimagining substances that nature has provided us, we have developed so many new materials. And it has helped us in building better houses, better cities, better roads, better infrastructure. But as these developments took place, they have also shaped the way we interact with each other and the way we live on this earth. Because you know that innovations made by material science, and material science is the intersection of physics, chemistry, and engineering. Because of these innovations in material science, today we could produce vaccines, we could produce antiseptics. But at the same time, we were also producing explosives, we were also producing poisonous gases to kill each other, to destruct each other. What has happened during last few decades is that we developed many better scientific tools, such as electron microscope, which plays a significant role in today's technological developments, X-ray crystallography, chromatographs, you have mass spectrometers. Why do we need these tools? We want to understand and manipulate the materials at an atomic level. And if we do that, then we can develop many new materials. Today, that is why scientists have developed the ability to design materials from scratch to meet any emerging needs of human societies. And we have developed so many new applications, very specific applications to meet the human needs. And in the process, we have also developed better understanding of how materials interact with, for example, light, heat, electricity, and magnetism. This has definitely led to the development of many new innovations, such as the integrated circuits. Today, the semiconductor chips drive our lives. If they are stopped for some reason, the production of automobiles will stop, the production of several other things that we commonly use in our life will stop. And we are able to manufacture high-speed processors, three-dimensional semiconductor memories, touch screens, and you have 5G communications, artificial intelligence, virtual reality, augmented reality, you name, there are technologies that are available to us because of the innovations that we have made. In future, the quantum computers will become a normal device for us to use, just as we are using the smartphones today, which we never imagined that we would be using as a common gadget. We also have now a better idea of how the materials interact with the biological tissues. As a result, we are able to make coronary stents, for example, artificial skin, hip and knee replacements, and so many applications where the inorganic materials interact with biological tissues. We have much better batteries now, automobiles now. And although I have spoken about so many such innovations, there is one material which has touched every aspect of our life. I'll give you a few seconds. Can you think of that material which has touched every aspect of our life? Well, that material, I'm disclosing the name, and if you got it in your mind, then that's good. And that material is plastic. It has changed our lives. Not just only our lives, it has changed the way we interact with the environment. Today's smartphone, for example, it is made of 75 elements from the periodic table. Many of us, we think it is made of silicon, some plastic and glass. That's not true. There are 75 elements from the periodic table in a typical smartphone. And the plastic is a man-made material. Right from the time you wake up until you go to bed, you use objects which are made of plastic. Apparently, there was a lady who decided that, okay, for one day, I want to keep away from plastic. And she woke up, and the first thing, you went to the toilet, the toilet cover is made of plastic. And then you go and you want to brush, the handle of the brush is made of plastic. So it went on like that, and she gave up. She said, well, I can't stick to my vow that I will keep away from plastic at least for one day. Well, I just cannot do that. Plastic has entered into all aspects of our life. And until 20th century, you will not believe, nobody ever thought of plastic. But today, plastic is there everywhere. Why I have mentioned about this is that all these innovations, they have their own consequences. For every progress that we have made, we indelible marks on this planet. While new materials and technologies have definitely improved our standards of living, but they have also turned into pollutants, affecting water sources, soil, and the atmosphere. And that's the reason why today we need to talk about the sustainable development. Smartphones, for example, what do you do after you use it for a couple of years? You throw it out. What will happen to your computers? There is so much of electronic waste that is growing. And mind you, we do not yet have an optimal method of converting this electronic waste into some usable material. That's a challenge for us. And there are so many chemicals that are getting into our food through the fertilizers that we use. And you have this carbon monoxide, which is getting into the air, which we breathe every day, nitrogen oxide, for example. And all these things come from the fossil fuels that we are burning day and night. And what is the implication of all this? If you look at how the human societies have evolved from the Stone Age to the Bronze Age, from the Bronze Age to the Iron Age, it took almost thousands of years. But today, we are changing much faster. Earlier, it took thousands of years, and that was almost like evolutionary development. If you look at the technological developments in the last 50 years or so, they have happened in a very short time. And the development that is, it is not evolutionary, but it has become revolutionary. So that is the challenge that we have. We have increasingly started hearing about climate change, carbon footprint, reduction in the biodiversity, the self-centered lives that we are leading to live. Today, we have become curiosity-driven, consuming human animals, right? We are pleasure-seeking, curiosity-driven human animals. And there are so many lifestyle diseases which are affecting millions of people across the globe. And there are viruses. We have just come out of this corona pandemic, and we know how much we have suffered. Almost each one of our family is touched by the virus, coronavirus. So if we compare our lifestyles today and our lifestyle, which was 500 years ago, for example, there is no doubt that today better technologies are there, and it has led to better standard of living, and you also have increased life expectancy. Now, under these circumstances, you ask any expert who is working on the global challenges, and if you ask them, tell me 3 major challenges that human societies are facing today, what does come to your mind? I will give 10 seconds to you. Those who are part of this meeting, can you think about 3 challenges that human societies are facing? The 3 common answers that will come are the following. Increasing inequality, that's a major challenge. And the failing economic systems, second major challenge. And then the deteriorating environmental situation. These are the three major challenges that human societies are facing. And I'm sure we may describe these three challenges in different words in different ways, but I'm sure you all agree that these are the three major challenges that we have. Amidst all these challenges, that's the reason why sustainable development, the very phrase, has become a buzzword. And we started talking about the sustainable development sometime in 1982, when the Earth Summit was held in 1982. People felt the need to focus on sustainable development. And they felt that there has to be a kind of balance, harmony among social development, economic development, and the protection of environment. The word sustainable development was endorsed by the UN General Assembly in the same year, sometime in 1982. The accurate definition of sustainable development, of course, it varies from context to context. Who is defining what? There is no well-defined definition for the sustainable development, but commonly people understand that it is that kind of development which meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of the future generations to meet their own needs. This is how we generally accept the meaning of the sustainable development. Of course, there are two issues that we need to underline here. First, sustainable development is possible only if there is a coordinated effort at local, national, and global levels. And secondly, and most importantly, the steps for realizing sustainable development can be implemented only through good governance, suitable policy framework, and a political will to implement. All these three are very, very important. Now, I come from the field of higher education, and those who are part of this, you're also part of the higher educational institutes. Therefore, let me share a couple of thoughts on the need for education for sustainable development. Let us call it ESD, Education for Sustainable Development. What is this concept and how ESD will help us in building a sustainable society? The concept of education for sustainable development, it started with the intern declaration by the World Education Forum in 2015. That's the background. And this declaration is also known as the Education 2030 Agenda. And you know that this is closely related to Target 4.7 of SDG 4, Sustainable Development Goal 4. What does it say? It says that by 2030, ensure that all learners acquire the knowledge and skills needed to promote sustainable development, including, among others, it emphasizes through education for sustainable development, sustainable lifestyles, human rights, gender equality, and promotion of a culture of peace and non-violence, global citizenship, and appreciation for cultural diversity, and of culture's role and contribution to sustainable development. So when we talk about sustainable development, we need to take away our focus from just technology and innovation. We need to include a much wider societal aspects. And that's the reason why culture also becomes, the role of culture also becomes important in sustainable development. The education for sustainable development, experts now believe that it has the potential to transform human beings into agents of change. And that's why we need to deliberate and brainstorm on ESD. Some scholars believe that the 17 SDGs and the 169 targets that we have set for ourselves, that will not change the world. What is required is that we need to focus on people, because it is the people who, when they are empowered through education, then they become responsible for sustainable future. That is why there is greater emphasis on education. Even in our national education policy, we talk about the Sustainable Development Goals, SDG 4. Right from school to higher education, therefore, now scholars are advocating that students should be sensitized on various topics such as impact of climate change on our lives, and the need for food and energy security, disaster mitigation and management, waste management, protecting the biodiversity, reduction of poverty, adopting sustainable means of production and consumption, prevention of land degradation, and protection of water resources. There is a gamut of issues on which we need to brainstorm. In fact, in 2018, UNESCO has said that ESD, education for sustainable development, is a dynamic process. Therefore, ESD has to take into account the constantly changing planetary conditions, environmental issues, and the resultant risks. All these things had to be included as part of the ESD as human societies evolve. And this can only be done by empowering the learners to make informed and responsible decisions. So how do we do that? Well, we can protect the environmental integrity and the economic viability and build social systems only through proper education. Therefore, there is an increased understanding now among the experts that ESD should consider not only local priorities and global issues, but it should also be culturally relevant to motivate these students and teachers to become lifelong learners so that they can critically think and change their behavior for ensuring sustainable development. I have used two important words: to critically think and change our behavior. Our behavior is internal to ourselves. So if you want to control something externally, you want to protect the environment, you need to look inward and you need to understand yourself. So let me say a few words on this, because there are also a group of researchers now. They are increasingly of this opinion that the United Nations SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals, are actually vague. They are weak and meaningless in the present context, because they believe that these SDGs, as advocated by the United Nations reports, that they are actually in conflict with the 1987 UN report, the Our Common Future, the report titled as Our Common Research Future. The SDGs are in conflict with that report. Why? Let me expand on this, why they are in conflict and why we need to think in a different way in the present context. These researchers think that sustainable development should be based on a set of constraints on human activities, including economic activities. And they also strongly believe that the moral imperatives of our needs, the equity, and the limits should guide the policy making. So for the first time now, we are talking about the moral imperatives of our needs. And morals and ethics are related to our own inner self. And this is a kind of thinking that is going on. Let me expand on that. Let me divert a little bit from the main theme of the sustainable development. This Earth has billions and billions of living organisms. And you know that the behavior of the living organisms is decided by their genetic makeup. And of course, the environment in which they live. Both these will make up. But however, there is a difference. The genetic makeup of living organisms, it helps us in our survival and reproduction in the living environments. Now take animals. The behavior of animals is controlled by genes, and it induces both positive and negative sensations in the animals, this genetic makeup. For example, take the behavioral traits such as survival, procreation, like eating and mating. These are naturally associated with pleasure. And harmful behavior is always associated with pain. In other words, animals' natural behavior, the natural behavior of the animals will always be to avoid pain and maximize the pleasure. And when you think about human nature, it is no different from that of the animal's nature. We also would like to avoid pain and maximize the pleasure. But however, there is one exception to this biological phenomena. And that difference between humans and animals is that the behavior of the animals can be shaped by the environment, such as training, such as teaching the animals to learn certain kind of behavior. We can do that. We can change the behavior of the animals. However, as compared to animals, the humans have advanced cognitive abilities. And that is what makes humans different from the animals. And because we have advanced cognitive abilities, it helps us to control our natural instincts through learning. And we develop different kinds of social norms and civilized behavior, which is absent in the case of the animals. In other words, humans have the ability to self-control through a cognitive process. And this is what is called a spiritual process. We have the scientific process. And what is the spiritual process? When people say that in addition to the materialistic developments, in addition to scientific development, we also must acquire a spiritual development. What does it mean? It is precisely this. It is using our cognitive processes to establish self-control by understanding ourselves better so that our behavior can be controlled. If that happens, then if we understand more about ourselves, if we understand about the meaning of our own existence, that is what is the spiritual process. And that is what the set of researchers who are saying that we need to understand sustainable development in a different way. And I tend to agree with this view for the simple reason that, as Swami Vivekananda said, in materialistic world, you should progress. But at the same time, you also need to evolve in your spiritual world. You need to have both spiritual development and also the materialistic development. And what the researchers are saying is actually very close to our own Indian thought process. Let me elaborate on this very briefly. In fact, when we are talking about sustainable development, we think that it's a recent phenomena. We think that it is a Western concept. It developed in United Nations, although many countries are part of United Nations. From an Indian perspective, we think that it's a modern concept. But the very idea, the concept behind sustainable development is actually part of our Indian thought process, part of our Indian civilization for thousands of years. If you look at the moral imperatives that we are talking about, how the moral imperatives should put a boundary on our human needs, this was actually thought about and captured very well in Isha Upanishad. And let me quote what Isha Upanishad has said. It said, everything in the universe belongs to the Supreme God. Therefore, take only what you need that is set aside for you. Do not take anything else, for you know to whom it belongs. There is a larger, wider meaning in this, in living in harmony with both living beings and also non-living beings. In fact, the moral imperatives were also best captured by our Shanti mantra. We all read the Shanti mantra so often. Om Sahana Vavat, Sahana Bhunak, Sahaviryam Karavavahai, Tejasvinavadita Mastu, Ma Vidvishavahai, Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. We are all familiar with this. What does it say? It says, may we evolve and be nourished together. May we work co-jointly with great energy. May our study be vigorous and effective. May we not mutually dispute. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. In fact, about establishing a just society where we talk about human rights, where we talk about respecting cultural diversity and so on. Establishing about just society through education for sustainable development, it could not have been captured better than a shloka from Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. I want to cite that shloka. What does it say? And I'm sure many of you are familiar with this shloka. It says, Om Sarve Bhavantu Sukhinaha, Sarve Santu Niramaya, Sarve Badrani Pashyantu, Ma Kashit Dukkha Bhag Bhavet, Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Very briefly, this shloka says, may all be prosperous and happy. May all be free from illness. May all see what is spiritually uplifting. May no one suffer. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. What could be a better foundation for sustainable development than this shloka? That is why, it is very, very important for our students to know what the Western scholars are saying about the sustainable development. But at the same time, it is also important for them to study and understand how our own Indian culture and civilization has talked about sustainable development in a very holistic manner and not in a piecemeal manner. Just reminds me of a small story from Mahabharata. When Pandavas were living in a forest, one day the Pandavas set out to get food and to get some wood for firewood for cooking food. And Dharmaraja calls all the 4 brothers and he tells them, please don't cut any more tree branches than what is required for today. Please don't kill animals or fetch fruits than what is required for today. That is the lesson that we need to learn from our own stories, from our own Puranas, from our own Itihasas. So much of literature that is present. It is important for us to revisit and build not just only the knowledge that we get from the Western world, but our own Indian civilization. Take what is available, the best that is available. As Mahatma Gandhi has said, keep your windows open. Let the wind come from all directions. That is what we need to do. So higher educational institutes, of course, have certain primary goals. And what are they? Well, they are supposed to impart education. They are supposed to create knowledge and transfer and transmit this knowledge to the seekers of knowledge. But in addition to the creation and dissemination of knowledge, as higher educational institutes, I think we need to seriously look at the sustainable developmental aspects. And it also becomes important as campuses. We need to promote a greater awareness about the environmental protection. We need to create better awareness about being ecologically responsible. We need to create this kind of culture in our educational institutes and be role model to the rest of the society. For example, we should focus on effective management of waste that we generate in our own campuses. How to conserve water? Can I take every drop of rainwater that comes into my campus and collect it so that it recharges my groundwater resources? Can I use methods of transportation inside the campuses which will conserve, which will minimize the energy needs? There are various measures that I think we need to do. IIT Delhi has already done installation of so much of solar panels in the campus, and there is also greater need to recycle the sewage water that we generate in our campuses so that we will become zero discharge campuses, and there is a greater need to do that. In addition to this, I think we need to periodically conduct training programs and activities on the campuses, because you see, in colleges and university campuses, it's like a river. Always you have a fresh water coming in. You always have a fresh batch of students who are coming from the schools and getting trained in our campuses. Therefore, there should be constant and continuous emphasis on providing these training programs to our students, so that our students will become ambassadors and our students will become implementers of this culture that we create in our campuses, so that they are guided by the moral imperatives, and when they leave our campuses, they become good human beings, and help build a sustainable human society through their activities. I would like to stop here, but before I conclude, I would like to thank Tapan for inviting me to this gathering and for providing me an opportunity to share some of my thoughts. I hope some of the ideas that I mentioned during the talk make sense to you. And I hope that when you leave this lecture, you have some ideas that we have critically thought about. So once again, thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir. So it was really very nice hearing from you on to this very important topic on the sustainable development. So now I would request the participants to ask few of the questions if they have. So in the meantime, the participants are turning up with the questions. So I have few of the questions put in the chat box by a few of the participants. So my first question is, what are the recent reforms which are coming up in the educational institutes to cultivate the cultural harmony among the students and the society?
Right. If you see the pillars of our national education policy, it is built on 5 pillars, right? Access, equity, quality, affordability, and accountability. So we need to bring that sense of inclusivity in our schools and colleges, because you see, we of course have outstanding institutes in our country, such as IITs and other institutes, some of the best central universities. But however, this excellence is on top of a huge pyramid, and the bottom of the pyramid consists of hundreds of universities. Now we have more than 1,000 universities, and we have nearly 45,000 colleges and millions of students there. Our educational system is one of the largest in the world, and it has about 300 million students. And in our higher educational institutes, we have nearly 40 million students. And out of that, how many are there in IITs, ISERs, and NITs? We are the most privileged lot. Where we need to focus is on the remaining millions of students who are studying in these colleges. We need to empower them by providing better access to high quality education. And that's the reason why when we are talking about the national education policy, we are focusing on how to introduce flexibility in our higher education. The reason why I'm using the word flexibility is, if you look at the higher educational institutions globally, not just only in India, our programs are highly rigid, meaning that it has certain structure and the students have to complete those requirements. And for some reason, if the student is unable to do, they drop out and they don't know where to go. What is important for us is to design our educational systems in such a way that it becomes more personalized for the students. It becomes more relevant in the lives of the students based on the cognitive abilities of the students, based on the financial abilities, the aspirations of the students. So what we are doing now, even including IITs and all other educational institutes, can we bring in this flexibility into our educational system? And the second most important thing is that we are somehow conditioned by these disciplinary boundaries. If we say an electrical engineer, he is an electrical engineer. But if you talk, it happened in one of the interviews, I asked a PhD student who is just finishing his PhD on a very emerging area. I asked him, please tell me what is energy security and why it becomes important to India. He had no clue, but he knew how to make a solar cell with the highest efficiency. Now you see the gap between our knowledge, right? It is not enough to be a good technologist. It is also important for you to become socially aware. And this is possible only when you have multidisciplinary approach in our education. So one of the other things that we are doing as part of the national education is provide this opportunity to customize the education by the student, by the mentors of the students, so that they get multidisciplinary knowledge. And today, it is very, very important for you to be able to work in a team. But how can you work in a team when there are different people in the team with the different kinds of expertise? How can I appreciate this and become part of a team? Not only become a part of a team, but also become a leading person, a leader of the team. And it's important to have this disciplinary knowledge. And that is where it leads to the question of the culture, because there is so much of diversity in our culture. Our appreciation towards this diversity is very, very important. And that can come only when you have a multidisciplinary knowledge, not just only engineering, even the social sciences, even the languages, arts and aesthetics, ethics, all these things should be part of our educational process.
Thank you so much, sir. Now, I would request participants, if you have any questions, then you may ask, sir.
May I go ahead? Then I have a question for sir. So as we know that all the effort starts from the bottom and it goes up and I wanted to know that what can the common citizen do to accelerate sustainable development? Now, how can a local community come together and help for development to be more sustainable? So how can the effort start from the ground and then reach to a level that can affect the entire system? So what would be your perspective on that?
Correct. Rohit, what you asked is an important question because, You think about any activity at which you are good at. Let's say cycling. How did you reach the level of proficiency that you have now? Through experimentation, you might have fallen down, you might have got feedback from your friends and relatives and so on, and then you reached a certain level of proficiency. So in our education, especially in Indian institutes, that experiential learning is something that is lacking. So the national education policy, therefore, focuses on this experiential learning. For example, AICTE is working on how to make internships as part of our learning process. They have developed a great website where industries come and the prospective students come, and there is a matchmaking, and students go to industry and study how in real life things are done. Only then you develop an appreciation. Similarly, if you want to develop appreciation for sustainable development, harmonious living, it is possible only when you practice it, only when you experience it. So that is why in the national education policy, we are also emphasizing on, can students, for example, during a summer holidays or during a semester break, can they go and spend a few days in a village, in a nearby village? Can they talk to the farmers, for example? Now, I go to my village very frequently. I still have my 100 years old house, very old house, which is built using mud. They didn't even use any bricks in those days. I go and meet people there, try to understand what is going on. So this kind of interaction is required. While you work on very emerging areas of technology, you also have to develop that aptitude and create those opportunities to go and live with people, to understand their problems. And that is the only way you can develop appropriate technological solutions which will lead to sustainable development. I will give you one small example. Some 50, 60 years ago, when scientists developed the cochlear implant, they thought they came up with a great innovation because now deaf people can hear if you have the cochlear implant. So they approached various deaf associations and societies, and they said, look here, we have a great invention for you. And the deaf society, those people, they said, why do we need this cochlear implant? We are just fine with being deaf. We enjoy our life. So you can see the disconnect. So just by being a great technologist, don't think that you can come up with a great solution which will lead to sustainable development. You need to interact with the stakeholders. And as educational institutes, we need to create that kind of opportunities for our students to interact with the stakeholders so that their thinking process is shaped to think in an integrated manner, not in piecemeal manner. I hope I have answered your question, Rohit.
Yes, sir. This was really insightful. I guess experiential learning would also help in generating an empathetic point of view. As you said, visiting villages and everything. This would also encourage some empathetic point of view in technological inventions. So this would bridge the disconnect that you mentioned that is there. Yeah. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
So we have another one question from one of our participants. So Raghav, you please can ask, sir.
Good evening, sir. This is Raghav, PhD student at IIT-Delhi. Sir, I have a question about our educational institutions. So despite so much efforts from government and institutions, the gender ratio in higher education is highly skewed. So can you enlighten us with some of the possible steps need to be taken by maybe government or people in higher position in institutions to lower the gender disparity in higher education and faculty positions in Indian institutions?
Correct. This is another very important question. One way of looking is to see the gender disparity is, although it is not an ideal number, GER, gross enrollment ratio. If you look at GER at school level, for example, it's almost 98%, and you have 50-50% female and male student composition if you see. But if you go to higher education, then this female and male ratio gets distorted, and that is where we need to be concerned about. There is no single quick fix for this, because the problem is very complex, multidimensional, and it's also societal, because certain societal practices which we need to improve upon, and also some family issues, financial issues, all these things may be contributing. So therefore, we need to work at multi-level in creating awareness, and also in creating opportunities for students to continue to reach higher levels of skills and knowledge, and acquire better degrees, higher degrees in higher educational institutes. So how do we do that? One way, of course, is that create some mechanisms. For example, let's say because of some family reason or personal reason, let's say I had to drop out of the college. Can I create a mechanism that after 2 years I can come and continue this? Let's say I have given birth to a child. Then obviously my primary goal will be to take care of the child. But after some time, can I come back and continue my studies? So we need to create these kind of mechanisms, and we also have to create a safe environment. This is also another thing that we need to think about. Don't just focus only about a couple of institutes like IIT or JNU where it is a safe environment. We need to look at the institutes at a national level. Do we have, for example, better facilities for girls? Do we have better toilets for the girls which are hygienic? Is there better awareness about these things? These are all issues I think we need to work upon. From time to time, we handhold with the universities, and we give guidelines for them on how to build this kind of ecosystem in the universities, so that there is higher gender parity, and more females will come and study in our higher educational institutes. I know in IIT-Delhi, for example, the female percentage is about maybe 10 to 15%. But in JNU, for example, it's almost 51% female students and about 49% the male students. So in science, technology areas, we still have a long way to go to promote and encourage more female students to study. This seems to be work in progress, and all of us, you and me, all of us have to work together.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
We have one another question, sir. We do understand the paucity of time. If you permit, sir, I can just ask another.
I will leave. Yeah.
Okay, so maybe Rakesh Singh Charak, would you like to ask sir a question? Kritika, you may please unmute him. Rakesh, please go ahead.
Sir, actually, I have one question. Sir, is there any clear-cut policy for in-service teachers who wants to continue their PhD if they are not PhD at the time of their appointment?
Yes, so it's a policy decision. In most IITs, for example, we have the QIP scheme, we have part-time PhD, right? Teachers who are living within 30 kilometers of Delhi, they can come and do. And if there are in-service teachers, is there a possibility for them to come and do PhD? I think in my best knowledge, I think part-time and the QIP schemes are there for them to do the PhD.
Actually, I am from Jammu and Kashmir state. And here we have no such policy in our government, and in our universities there is also not any policy for part-time. Means we cannot go for part-time.
Right. So whether you call it a good thing or bad thing, but education is a concurrent, is in the concurrent list, and all the state universities and private universities are under the state governments, and most of them, they have their own acts. So I understand that there are some limitations. We need to work upon them, and that's the reason why I'm also meeting the vice chancellors from across the country. Just today, I had a meeting with 25 vice chancellors from Gujarat, and a few days ago, I had a meeting with vice chancellors of deemed to be university. Last week, I had a meeting with all the central university vice chancellors. We are trying to sensitize and see how we can provide better opportunities for our in-service teachers also. And I hope that we'll be able to do. And as you promised, I think that is the last question. But before I conclude here, if you permit, I would like to tell one small story. Is that okay?
Okay, sir.
Yes, sir. Perfectly fine, sir.
Right. You know, when we look at issues, sometimes they appear so complex, and it's very easy for us to feel that despair and say that, well, can anything be done? But I think we need to be optimistic all the time, and we need to have a positive bent of mind. And if you want to really achieve something great in your life, keep your goals very high. If you have set a lower goal, then you're not going to really achieve something significant. So I want to tell you a small story. You know, there is a person called Anand Kumar, and Anand Kumar had a domestic cat. And as usual, during lunchtime, the domestic cat was very, very hungry, and it came out of the house to look for a mouse. And it looked at the left side, and it saw, to its luck, a mouse there. And mouse also seemed to have looked at the cat, and it appeared completely frozen. And the mouse was about to jump on that and eat. Suddenly there was a noise from the right side, and when it looked at right side, and there was a bigger mouse, but it's slightly far away, and it looked very happy, and it did not even care the cat. In a split of a second, the cat has to make a decision, and it made the decision. It jumped on the right side on the mouse, which appeared to be frozen in fear, and it caught its neck. And to the surprise of the cat, it found that there was no blood, there was no flesh. The mouse appeared to be just a toy. Now, this is what will happen. And if you set lower goals, you will end up like that, achieving nothing. You should set your eye on higher goals. Although it may appear to be tough initially, you will achieve substantially in your life if you set for yourself higher goals in your life. So with that message, I would like to conclude here, and thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you so much, sir. And indeed, sir, it was a great pleasure for us to hear from you. And it was a completely insightful lecture. And we can understand, sir, it's very difficult for you to take out time and give a lecture. And we do appreciate that you have taken out time out of your busy schedule. And we just love to hear from you, sir. And we do hope that we'll call upon you, sir, in our forthcoming lectures and seminars, sir. Thank you so much, sir. The IIT-Delhi fraternity feels privileged on hearing from you, sir. Thank you so much.